Welcome, everybody. My name's E.J. Jones, and I'm here at Georgia Fireline, and we have a guest today, Matt Kilgol, who is an attorney, and we're glad to have him. Thanks, Matt, for coming by.
Absolutely, sir. Thanks for having me.
Matt, we're going to jump right into it. We get a lot of questions here at Georgia Fireline concerning different laws and things of that nature when it comes to firearms. And one of the questions that we typically get is the constitutional carry versus permitless carry. Can you enlighten us a little bit about the difference between the two, or is there one?
Absolutely. You know, my office is here in Marietta. The majority of my practice, we try to focus on firearms-related matters, and that's a question that comes up quite a bit. To be honest with you, there's really no difference between constitutional carry and permitless carry. It's not necessarily considered true constitutional carry. The Second Amendment does say that we have the right to keep and to bear arms, but there's no scheme or process in the Constitution for weapons carry licenses and things of that nature. Constitutional carry and permitless carry are interchangeable. One of my pet peeves as a lawyer here in Georgia is that we don't have a permit, we have a license. And it's a whole lot easier to say permitless carry than licenseless carry. So it tends to trip people up sometimes. They say, well, where do I get my concealed permit? I say, well, you can't. We don't have one. But constitutional carry, permitless carry, both mean the good things that have happened here in Georgia in the past year and a half.
And we're really kind of focusing this video to talk to those residents of Georgia because we get these questions a lot about reciprocity. So when we talk about reciprocity, how many states does Georgia actually have reciprocity with? And I know that there's a color scheme system. You'll look on the map and you have some that are green, some that are yellow, and some that are red. So tell us a little bit about the reciprocity and how it works for Georgia residents.
Currently, I believe we have reciprocity with 32 other states. Now, constitutional or permitless carry also folds into this. There are 32 states where we have, and I think I've got that number right, it's 32 or 34. Now, what's great is the law requires our Attorney General, Christopher Carr, to keep a list where everyone can take a look at that. So if you go to the Attorney General's website or just Google Georgia Attorney General Firearms, it should send you to the list so that you can check every state that we have reciprocity with. And if you were to drive 200 miles from Atlanta in every direction, well, if you go south, you're still in Georgia. But pretty much in every other direction, you're going to hit a state where we do have reciprocity. So 32 states with reciprocity. There are now 26 states in the United States that have constitutional or permitless carry. People ask me all the time, well, with so many states with permitless carry, do I still need a license? And I say yes. And one reason is reciprocity. And the easiest example is this. Do you like to go to the beach? If you like to go to the beach, that's fine. If you go to Alabama, perfect. Constitutional carry, you're okay there. Florida has aspects of constitutional carry. I think now their law as of July 1st is that you can carry without a weapons carry license concealed. They still have problems with open carry there. South Carolina, no permitless or constitutional carry. You still need a license there. So if you want to go to the beach, keep a weapons carry license.
Fantastic. So the person who may have a weapons carry license, if they wanted to travel, they still have to abide by the state laws by that particular state. So it just doesn't transfer over that everything that you can do in Georgia, you can do, say, in Florida or North Carolina or any other of the states of reciprocity. You still have to abide by those state laws.
State by state, that's true. You have to follow the laws of the state that you're in, but that's the same with anything without firearms. If I travel to Houston, Texas, I have to follow all of their criminal laws when I'm in Houston, Texas. Miami, Florida. New York, New York. Don't travel to New York, right? Now, in terms of carrying a firearm, you still have to follow their rules. There are federal rules that protect you, however. There's a rule called the Firearm Owners Protection Act. And what that act says that if you're lawful to possess a firearm where you start your travel, and you're lawful where you end your travel, you can travel through any other state in the United States and be protected by federal law if you separate the firearm from the ammunition, put the firearm in a locked case, and make it inaccessible from the passenger compartment of the vehicle.
Good to know.
Well, if it ain't loaded, it don't shoot, right? So I still say, to the extent that you can, try and follow those local rules so that you can still maintain your firearm and be protected.
Now, when we talk about weapons carry license in Georgia, there tends to be a tendency whether or not we can open carry or we can conceal carry with the license. Explain to us a little bit about legally, is it okay for a person in the state of Georgia to carry open carry without a weapons carry license?
Yes. So we'll start with the basics, and this is one reason that Georgia's so great.
Okay.
We have one thing and one thing only. It's a license. We are a shall issue state,
okay,
which means that if you qualify, the state of Georgia has to give you a license. You go to the probate court of the county where you live,
right.
You apply for the license. When you receive the license, it is a right that they give it to you. That's why we call it a license and not a permit.
Gotcha.
Permits can be permissive and regulatory. License is a right. Okay. Once you have that weapons carry license, you can carry openly or concealed.
Okay.
Anywhere on your person.
Gotcha.
You can carry openly or concealed anywhere in your vehicle. Now that we are what is called a lawful carry state, constitutional carry state, if you have a weapons carry license, you're called a lawful weapons carrier.
Okay.
If you don't have a weapons carry license, but you qualify for the license and you're eligible under federal law to possess a firearm, you do not need the license, and you can still carry openly or concealed, loaded or unloaded, anywhere on your person, anywhere in your bag, anywhere in your vehicle.
Great.
Vehicle carry is always a big topic that folks ask me about, and I always tell them, anywhere in the vehicle, if you're lawful, is perfectly fine.
Okay, which brings me to traveling. People now, I mean, summer is about to end. We got school session going back in. We have people who are doing traveling throughout the state, and let's say that they're traveling in their car and they're going to a different state. We know if they have a weapons carry license, but let's talk a little bit about when a person's going to take flight. Let's say they want to go and travel through the airport, and we understand that Atlanta is the #1 leading place of airports that now confiscate more firearms than anyone in the nation for people maybe not knowing the law or just going out and breaking the law. How can a person protect themselves when they're taking flight and travel, and that means?
And this is a very good question. I think it's very important information to share, and there's a couple of ways you can do it. First and foremost, get the license.
Okay.
In all Georgia law, the requirement for the license to carry has been removed, except for one place. That's in an airport.
Okay.
Now, you can still carry without a license in the unsecured portions of the airport, but if you attempt to go through security with a firearm and you don't have a license, you'll be arrested.
Okay.
If it's the Atlanta airport, they'll confiscate your firearm and put you in jail in Clayton County.
Okay.
Because that part of the airport's in Clayton County.
Okay.
With a weapons carry license, you have what's called a right of retreat, which means that if they find it and you show them the license, you have the license with you, you have that right to retreat and put the weapon in your vehicle.
Okay.
That's the current procedure at the airport as of August of 2023.
Okay.
You'll still probably get a federal citation to appear in federal court.
Okay.
And you'll get either way, with or without a license, you'll get a letter from the TSA that said, hey, remember that time you brought a gun to the airport?
Right.
Pay us $5,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they're very heavy on the fines, and those are things that you absolutely can work through. You're right, Atlanta, busiest airport in the world. Most people try and come through here with a firearm. Yep. There are things you can do to protect yourself, and you can carry a firearm when you travel.
Okay.
You can't carry on.
Yep.
Checked baggage. The TSA has rules. Your specific carrier, air carrier, is going to have some of their own rules.
Okay.
But by and large, you go to the gate, you declare the firearm, they look at it. You have to separate it from the ammo in a separate box. You put the firearm in a locked box.
Okay.
You can keep the ammunition in the same box if it's in its own box, right? If it's in a paper box or a plastic box, put everything in a case, hard-sided case, non-TSA locks.
Okay.
So the TSA doesn't have a key to it.
Okay,
right?
great.
They'll mark it as a firearm. I think your bag is the last thing on the plane and the first thing off.
Okay.
Sometimes I tell people you want to make sure your stuff gets there, so you got a gun in it.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Don't actually do that unless you have one. Right.
Okay.
Right. But you can carry it when you're traveling.
Okay. I'm going to turn this subject a little bit, some of the questions that we may get here in the store. So when a person talks about gifting a firearm, right? So they want to purchase a firearm and they want to gift it to maybe a family member or someone else. How does that work legally, and what is a person up against when you're trying to gift a firearm to someone else?
Gifting a firearm is perfectly lawful.
Okay.
The key things that you have to remember is you have to be lawful to possess the firearm to gift it, and the person that you're gifting it to has to be lawful to receive it. Meaning otherwise under federal law, if they walked into a gun store, they could purchase a firearm.
Okay.
Which typically means you can't gift a pistol to someone under the age of 18.
Okay.
You can still gift them a rifle or shotgun in Georgia. At the age of 18, you become eligible to purchase a rifle or shotgun in a gun store, just like Georgia Firing Line.
Okay.
But you don't actually gain that right until 21 to purchase through a gun store. You can still possess a pistol at the age of 18. So if I wanted to give my 18-year-old a firearm, I could do that.
Okay.
He has to be a resident, or she, whoever you're gifting this firearm to, has to be a resident of the same state that you are a resident of.
Okay.
It's a violation of federal law for you, so it's a crime for you to gift it to someone either who is not eligible or lives out of state.
Okay.
And it's a crime for that person to carry it across state lines back to their home.
Okay.
So the key thing is they've got to be eligible to possess it, and they have to live in the same state as you.
Okay. Good point. Now, when purchasing a firearm, we run into situations which are called straw purchases. How can people stop themselves from being involved in a straw purchase, or what does a straw purchase really mean in a court of law?
What a straw purchase means is that you are purchasing a firearm for someone else. Now, it's different than a gift.
Right.
If you were to find out the goodness of your heart that you want to give me a firearm, which I recommend, by the way, then you can give me a gun. That's okay. If I were to come to you and say, EJ, look, I've got $1,000 here. I'm going to give you $1,000. I want you to buy a gun and then give it to me. That's definitely, I think that's considered a straw purchase, right? If someone actually comes to you and says, look, I can't buy a gun, I don't really know what to get, just buy something and I'll pay you for it. That's a straw purchase. And that's going to put you in deep trouble with alcohol, tobacco, firearms, potentially the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Wow. So now, you mentioned age restriction, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we're talking about this. These are federal laws, not just a state law in terms of the age restriction. So people may come to a store, an FFL dealer, and say, look, they want to buy a firearm, but the federal law states that they have to be a certain age to acquire certain guns. And what is that age again for us?
Well, and you have to keep in mind as well, there are state laws that you have to abide by. Typically the breakdown, though, would be, and this is a very basic breakdown, it doesn't fit all circumstances. Federal law deals with the purchase and interstate transport of firearms for the most part. And state law deals with who can possess, where they can possess, and obtaining weapons carry license. That's a very elementary breakdown, and they do cross over quite a bit. As a rule, you can purchase in Georgia, you can purchase a handgun at the age of 18 from another person in a private sale. But under federal law, you cannot purchase a handgun from a federal firearms licensee like Georgia Firing Line until you're 21 years old age. At 18, you can also purchase a rifle or a shotgun, a long gun, at Georgia Firing Line. And prior to that, you can be gifted or purchase or possess. There's no, to my knowledge, there's no real cutoff age for possession of long guns or rifles. And now if your viewers want to look that up, it's 18 USC, that's the United States Code, 922, subsection X, which is what deals with possession of firearms by individuals under the age of 21.
So Matt, as we talk about traveling, we noticed that even though you go out throughout the state, we have private sector, you have public sectors, state-owned buildings. When you see that sign that says, no firearms allowed, that can be challenging for someone who wants to carry firearms on a daily basis for protection or their right to do so. When a person doesn't see the sign, can they be arrested when they go into a place that had a sign that posted it said, no firearms or no weapons allowed?
If the question is, can they be arrested?
Yes.
The answer is yes. If the question is, should they be arrested? The answer is maybe. And if the answer is it lawful or unlawful, or that's the question, then the answer would be it depends.
It depends.
So let's break down public carry, carry on a sidewalk or in the middle of a square at a middle of a town square, versus private carry in a private location, versus carry in a government-owned building, we'll say a publicly owned building, with a weapons carry license in Georgia, or as a lawful weapons carrier without a license. You can carry publicly. You can carry privately. So publicly means if I walk to Lawrenceville Square or Marietta Square or any other small town, you can carry. Any other large town, downtown Atlanta, carry down the street, right? if you can carry into a private building. And what the law says is that as a lawful weapons carrier, you can carry in any place not otherwise restricted by law.
Okay.
And that means public areas, private areas like a gun store, restaurant, a bar. You can carry a firearm into a bar in Georgia.
Sure.
Grocery store, a bank, wouldn't necessarily recommend that. A movie theater. These places, as private places, can restrict you. They can exclude you or eject you, is what the law says.
Okay.
It's got to be a person who owns or is in control of that private property.
Okay.
And they can exclude you or eject you.
Okay.
Now, there is no law in Georgia that says a sign hanging on the door is enough to keep you out.
Okay.
Some states have that law. Texas, for instance.
Texas has that law.
Right.
Okay.
They call them, they're Model Penal Code 30.06. They call them 30-06 signs.
Oh.
And if the business derives more than 50% of its revenue from the sale of alcohol, all they have to do is hang a sign, no guns.
Okay.
We don't have that in Georgia.
Okay.
If you see a sign on the wall that says no guns allowed, use your own best judgment as to whether you should go in or not.
Okay.
If someone asks you to leave, it's not a weapons violation. If you refuse to leave, it's criminal trespass.
Okay.
And here's what I tell everybody that I teach this to. In order to be found guilty of criminal trespass, the state has to show you had knowledge that your presence was no longer allowed.
Okay.
If the only thing they have is a sign on the wall or a sign on the door, it's very hard for them to prove you had knowledge of that unless you tell somebody. So as I say, everyone has a right to remain silent. Few people have the ability. Right?
Exactly.
Don't talk to people.
Yeah.
If they say you passed a sign, what sign?
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
But the long and the short is if they ask you to leave, you have to leave.
Okay.
That sign is some evidence they don't want you there, but it's only some evidence.
Okay.
It's not the end all or the be all.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. My personal recommendation is if you know they don't want you to protect yourself, give your money to someone else.
Exactly. So as we kind of look at that, it brings me into something that I know there's different laws on brandishing. I don't know if Georgia has a statute pertaining to the brandishing law, but how does brandishing affect residents of Georgia?
So let's be clear about what we're discussing. When you say brandishing, you mean pulling out a pistol, not necessarily pointing it at anyone.
Correct.
Just, hey, I got a gun.
Just if I'm concealed and I showed my firearm, would that be considered brandishing?
Okay.
Or if I did pull the firearm and not point it, would that be considered brandishing, and would I be breaking the law?
Well, as a rule, there is the word brandishing doesn't appear in Georgia law.
Okay.
We do have some laws that cover that type of action. For starters, we have a misdemeanor called pointing a pistol at another. A misdemeanor means you can go to jail for up to 12 months.
Okay.
EJ, you can go to jail for up to 12 months for speeding in Georgia.
Sure.
Virtually every traffic violation in Georgia is a misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor, okay.
So let's say I pull my imaginary finger gun and I point it at you. The law says if I do it intentionally and without being justified, meaning I'm protecting myself or another person, then I'm in violation of the law and go to jail for up to 12 months.
Wow.
That's a misdemeanor.
Okay.
If, however, you think I'm going to shoot you, it may no longer be pointing a pistol. It might be considered aggravated assault. That's assaulting someone, placing them in fear of receiving bodily harm by the use of a deadly weapon.
Okay.
And that's 20 years, potentially.
Okay.
And it's the use of so we say aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault with the intent to murder, rape, or rob.
Okay.
That's 40 years. And then possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, that's 5 years.
5 years.
So you go from 12 months for pointing a pistol to 45 years for aggravated assault, and the only difference is whether the person you pointed the gun at thinks you might use it. So what I tell folks is, look, there are some situations that you have to protect yourself.
Sure.
My personal opinion, my professional advice is, don't touch that pistol unless you have to use it.
Okay.
If you show it, that's a threat of force. And you can use a threat of force to, if you have a reasonable belief, the belief of any reasonable person, that you must act to prevent an unlawful contact with yourself.
Okay.
Right? So if you think I'm going to punch you in the face, you can show that gun and say, look, I'm armed, better not do that.
Okay.
General advice, I mean, you're a firearms instructor.
Sure.
You probably tell your students, don't telegraph your shot, as we say in basketball.
Okay.
If you're going to use it, and you have to use it, use it.
Yeah.
Don't say, I'm really angry.
Right. Okay.
You know, so what I say is that brandishing can be considered anything a police officer who's going to arrest you thinks it is.
Okay.
Right? Folks ask me all the time, well, what if I just take it out and hold it down by my side?
Right.
It's perfectly fine. There's no law against it.
Okay.
But the bad guy is going to run off, call the police, tell them that you pointed a gun at him, and when the police show up, they're going to ask you one question. Where's the gun?
Okay.
Because they've already decided you got one.
Yeah.
And when you show them where the gun is, then you have confirmed everything they think happened.
Okay.
So to the extent that you're able to, don't touch that gun unless you absolutely have to use it.
Good. That's a good point. Stand your ground. We hear this term thrown out. Many different states, or particularly in Florida, you'll hear stand your ground. What does that mean for Georgia? Is there a stand your ground law for Georgia or not?
Yes, there's actually a statute in Georgia. We have a stand your ground statute that says if you are justifiably using the threat of force, stop or I'll shoot, force, which could be kicking, slapping, biting, punching, right? Any ability you have to repel an unlawful contact.
Okay.
Or deadly force. Deadly force is any force which could cause death or great bodily injury. Okay. Right? If you're lawful in using threats of force, or deadly force, you do not have to seek an avenue of escape. Okay. You can stand your ground and repel that threat. Okay. And that is actually a law in Georgia. We are a stand your ground state.
Stand your ground state.
And a lot of times that law is referenced in conjunction with what we call the Castle Doctrine. Right. People in their minds think that the Castle Doctrine and stand your ground are either linked and they're certainly connected. Okay. But they're not the same thing.
Same thing. Okay.
The Castle Doctrine is not really a law. It's a legal philosophy. It's a legal doctrine. Okay. And it goes all the way back to when, folks lived in castles. Sure. And you are the king or the queen or the village idiot of your castle. That's what my wife calls me, right? The point being that you can protect the castle when it's invaded. Now in Georgia, if we call that castle what we call a habitation, right? That's our home, that's our car, and that's our place of business. Okay. We can protect all of those things, and we use stand your ground in order to do so. Okay. But you can also use stand your ground at any time if you're protecting yourself or any other person. Okay. As long as there's a reasonable threat that can be identified.
Gotcha. Which takes me to, and I'm glad you talked about that, because that takes me to the Good Samaritan. All right. People ask questions in self-defense classes or any class maybe they're taking. Can they help someone else? If someone else is in need or being injured, can they intervene if they have a firearm? So that takes me to, we have a Good Samaritan law here in Georgia, or do we not?
We do, but a Good Samaritan in the law means a little different than what we're talking about. Okay. Okay, so we'll break it down. It's actually two different things. Okay. You can protect in Georgia, our basic statute, it's Official Code of Georgia 16-3-21. Okay. And it's entitled Defense of Self or Others. The law in Georgia allows you to defend yourself or any other person to the same extent that he or she could protect himself or herself. Okay. So even the law says that it's okay to protect other people. You just have to use that level of force that they'd be able to use to protect themselves. Gotcha. Good Samaritan means something a little bit different. Typically, Good Samaritan is used in conjunction with you arrive at the scene of an accident. You're driving home, you see an accident, you get out to help someone. Okay. As long as you are faithfully attempting to help them, you can't be sued for the help that you give. Okay. Now, important thing is that if you do happen to stop and render aid to someone, don't take any compensation for it. Oh, hey, thanks so much. Let me send you an Amazon gift card. Nope. Oh, okay. Unneeded. Because if you accept that, then that might bust the Good Samaritan bubble. Oh, wow. Right? So Good Samaritan in the law means something a little different than just the assistance of another person. Okay. You can always step in and assist someone. Assist someone. And it also kind of wraps into citizen's arrest. Okay. A lot of times when we talk about Good Samaritans, people say, well, if I get out of the car and help someone who's being assaulted, can I be the Good Samaritan and hold a gun on somebody until police get there? Well, Georgia, as of 2 summers ago, is the only state in the United States, as far as I'm aware of still, that does not have a citizen's arrest statute. Okay. We used to have one. But because of the Ahmaud Arbery case down in South Georgia, there was a law passed by Georgia's General Assembly that removed that right. Now, the simple fact is this, and we talk about general principles of law. From a practical perspective, if police arrive and it's clear that someone else has violently assaulted a victim, and you are assisting the police, and they can see that you have assisted them, it's very unlikely that you could be charged.
Okay.
But the law in Georgia now, because of that, and rightly so, that was the right thing to do to address issues like Ahmaud Arbery, right? But, and I won't say it really threw the baby out with the bathwater, but it did sort of leave us a little more exposed as folks who feel like if given the opportunity, we could protect someone else.
I got you.
So you have to be very careful. Obviously, if police show up and you're holding the gun, you want to be careful anyway.
Okay.
And that's another issue to talk about.
So, in a traffic stop, if you're stopped by law enforcement, are we obligated to declare firearm to law enforcement?
Obligated? No.
Okay.
There is no Georgia law that requires you to disclose the presence of a firearm or of a weapons carry license. Moreover, police officers don't know that you have a gun or that you have a weapons carry license because it's against Georgia law to maintain a database of gun owners or to share information about weapons carry licenses.
Okay.
So county to county, I live in Cobb County, Georgia. I have a Cobb County weapons carry license. If I go to Fulton County, they don't know that I have a weapons carry license.
Oh, wow.
And there's no law in Georgia that says the very first thing you got to do, officer, I have a gun in the car. Right? You don't have to do that.
Okay.
Some states you do.
Yep.
My understanding is that South Carolina has one of those duties to disclose.
Okay.
States like Texas, for instance, I know that historically what they call the license to carry, the LTC in Texas, was connected to the driver's license.
Okay.
So a police officer knew that you had a license before you even got out of the car.
From running your driver's license, they could just tell you had a gun.
Exactly.
Okay.
Not the case here in Georgia.
Okay.
Police officers will ask you, but there's even a law in Georgia that says they can't detain you if they know you have a firearm simply because you have a firearm.
Okay.
There's got to be some other reason that they detained you. Right.
Okay.
So what I tell folks is it's a game day decision. If your gun's locked up in the trunk, you're returning from a hunt, of course you've got camo on.
Yep.
It's a Saturday when you should have been watching football.
Okay.
So the officer goes, well, this is obviously a diehard dove hunter, right? You've been to a bird shoot today. You don't have to tell them. Up to you. Now, if you want to show that weapons carry license, that's perfectly fine. If that gun you're carrying strong side and that's where your wallet is, you're definitely going to want to say something.
Say something, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because you might have Danny Glover in the driver's side,
sure,
but you might have Mel Gibson, new guy on the other side of the car, new guy on the other side of the car, and all he or she sees
is you reaching
gun.
Okay.
Right. And for those that say it's a good idea to always tell, I refer them to the young gentleman who was shot and killed by police. Was it in Michigan?
I can't think of the case, but I do know the case.
I just had the guy's name in my mind,
he
too.
Told the people he had a firearms and he was shot.
Yeah, he said he was a young African-American female, or a young African-American male. His girlfriend's in the car with him. Oh, God, man.
Yeah, I know the case. I just can't recall the name right now.
It'll pop up to me in a couple minutes. But he told the officer, he's like, look, I've got a weapons carry license, and I've got a firearm in the car. Officer took 2 steps back, pulled his gun, shot, and killed him. And was acquitted at trial.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when we look at this again, I'm starting to see people come to the shop for court-ordered classes. I don't know if you know about how these classes work for us, but why would an attorney or a judge have a person come to a safety class because they've done something wrong with the firearm and they're required to come to a store or firearm shop like this to take a training safety class?
From my perspective, having had clients who have either been ordered to do that or sometimes we do it prophylactically. We do it ahead of time. It's good to show that, let's say, here's the classic example, and I'm not referring to anyone specifically. Classic example, you're cleaning your shotgun, thought there wasn't a round in the chamber, you didn't clear it adequately, boom, round goes off, goes through your apartment wall and blows up a television in the other apartment, right? Police come, look, I'm sorry, we got to give you a citation because you put a hole in the wall. You go to see a lawyer. A good lawyer is going to say, look, we need to show that you're not a complete idiot with firearms. Everybody makes mistakes, and a lot of folks like to talk about, well, you know, it was an accidental discharge. I suspect you probably teach your students that there's no such thing as an accidental discharge. It's a negligent discharge, right? So what we do is we go and we take a class to help mitigate the concern that a judge or prosecutor might have that you're just a complete idiot with firearms. accidents happen, and thankfully in that situation, which is a made-up situation, nobody was involved, nobody was injured, but it's a good step to show that you're willing to do the right things to atone for this issue.
So in a sense, you're getting ahead of this situation before you can get somewhere
Now,
else.
it can be a little complicated if, client comes to me and says, hey, what if I take a gun class? I'm like, well, that's great. Have you looked at the conditions of your bond? The conditions of your bond say don't possess firearms.
Right. Okay.
So you have to be aware of the whole
spectrum here that's going on.
You might think you're doing right when in fact when the prosecutor sees that, they put you back in jail and yank your bond from you.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
well, we're going to get into what to do if you have to use your firearm, and I think this is really the Armed and Educated, which a lot of these topics are in the book that Matt.
The book? You mean the book I wrote?
Yeah, the book that he wrote, which is on our 2nd edition. So here's what happens. It's like, what do you do if you have to use your firearm, right? So Matt, what's the first thing happens that you would like, you're my attorney and I'm your client, what's the first thing I should do if I'm involved in a firearm shooting where I had to defend myself with my firearm?
Very first thing is protect yourself completely.
Okay.
And when I say protect yourself completely, don't lose your guard.
Okay.
Right? If you've shot 1 time or 15 times, I need you to make sure that you've completely dispelled that threat.
Okay.
Now, what I don't mean is go over and turn the body over and kick it a couple of times. I even counsel folks, and this is me. Other lawyers might not say this. I say, look, don't be the hero. Once you've protected yourself, and we don't. That's another thing. Nomenclature. The things we say. Hey, I shot somebody.
Right.
Hey, I tried to kill someone. He may not be dead. Nope. You defended yourself.
Yes, exactly.
That's the thing. I don't matter if it's with a hammer, you drop an anvil on the coyote's head, right? Or firearm. You have defended yourself right from the very beginning. You've got to be in the right mindset.
Okay.
This is just like training with a firearm.
Sure.
It's got to be muscle memory.
Okay.
You've defended yourself. The very first thing you do is not go over and try and administer first aid. Right? Now, this is more my opinion. It might be a little more incendiary than some people think.
Yeah.
Number one, I grew up in Alabama. We used to say playing possum. Right?
Okay.
That fellow might be playing possum.
Exactly.
Right? Number two, if I'm the prosecutor and you attempt to resuscitate this individual, what I'm going to say is that you didn't do it out of the kindness of your heart. You did it because you didn't want him to die because you knew what you did was wrong.
Wow. Okay,
so
good point.
Once you have protected yourself, call 911.
Okay.
Tell them who you are. Tell them where you are.
Okay.
Tell them you've been the victim of a crime. Ask them to send the ambulance and the police, and then hang up the phone.
Okay.
It's not against the law to hang up on 911. Don't answer if they call you back.
Okay.
Once you've done that, don't make any statements to anyone. If your wife or your boyfriend or girlfriend or your uncle or your cousin comes downstairs, hey, what happened? Well, I shot that bastard. Right. Nope. Go back upstairs. Police are on their way. In that moment, once you have called 911, you have secured the scene. Okay. Call your attorney. Okay. And you need to have an attorney. Okay. So,
and I'm glad you said call your attorney, because I think people, as you go through life, you meet people, you may have an attorney already, but there's a difference in attorneys, Matt. There's a difference between having a tax attorney, there's a difference between having a real estate attorney, and then a criminal defense attorney, someone who has the experience to defend you. So how does that person go about finding that right attorney for them?
You need to know ahead of time, and this is not it's not an advertisement, but I actually am the independent program attorney for U.S. Law Shield. Okay. U.S. Law Shield's a self-defense program. There are a lot of good ones out there. Yep. I've partnered with them about a dozen years ago. Okay. And I represent all their members here in Georgia.
Fantastic.
So that's be up to date on what your rights and responsibilities are. Yep. I would say that. You have a right against unreasonable searches and seizures. However, you have just dialed 911, said that you needed assistance in your home. Yep. You've invited the police into your home. Okay. Okay. You have a right against self-incrimination. That's a Fifth Amendment right. You have a right to counsel, which is a Sixth Amendment right. Right. When I say self-incrimination, police show up and say, "What happened? I told that SOB if he came back, this is what would happen." Right. We don't say that. Okay. Obviously, it's your home. As I tell folks, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're in your underwear, right? At this point, you may need new underwear. I don't know. Tell them, look, I don't know who this guy is. I'm the victim. This is my home. I'll be happy to make a statement to you.
Yep.
My lawyer's on his way.
Okay.
Or my lawyer's on her way.
Gotcha.
And I'm only doing that because he told me or she told me that she's going to come and help. So if y'all will just wait till my lawyer gets here, I'll be happy to make a statement to you.
Okay. So Matt, tell us a little bit about the book that's on the second edition.
Yes. So in conjunction with U.S. Law Shield, as I said, I'm the independent program attorney. About 4 years ago now, I wrote Georgia Gun Law Armed and Educated.
Okay.
And this book covers most aspects of weapons carry licenses here in Georgia, how you can carry, how you can protect yourself, how you can protect your family. It covers a lot of federal law. Okay. And then in the second edition, which we have here now, we included at least 3 chapters on Fourth Amendment law, searches and seizures.
Okay.
Walking down the street, police officer says, "Hey, I want to talk to you." Mm-hmm. What can you say? What should you say? Okay. You know, unless they have some reason to believe you've committed a crime, you can keep on walking.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that, and as an attorney, and I had a motions hearing just on this very thing last week, we have to determine at what point is someone no longer free to leave. At what point are they in custody? Because if you're in custody and the police then begin to question you, that's when your Miranda rights apply. Okay. And one of the biggest misconceptions is police have to read you Miranda.
Right.
They absolutely do not. And if they don't say anything to you and you just start talking, everything's going to be used against you. Okay. So these are the little keys, and we go through a lot of that in the book.
Stuff in the book.
And we're working on updating the book now to cover constitutional or permitless carry here in Georgia, so we hope to have a third edition in the not too distant future.
Well, Matt, tell us a little bit, how can we get this book? How can the viewers, if they want to obtain this book, or how can they also get in contact with you if they would need your services?
That's great. You can contact me. My office is in Marietta, Georgia. Yep. It's georgiagunlawyers.com and mwkilgo@kilgolaw.com. Or you can just email me at matt@georgiagunlawyers.com. Okay. You can probably get a copy of the book through U.S. Law Shield. Okay. So if you go to U.S. Law Shield, you Google them. They're a member services program. And if you go to my website, I think we might even have a chapter up about searches and seizures that you can get for free.
Good. And what we'll do is work with Matt on how to get this book inside the store, so that if you come and visit us at the store, we'll have this book here for you, and we'll work some things out with Matt and make sure we have these available for you. But Matt, that's going to wrap it up for this session, man. I really appreciate you coming by and telling us and explaining to us all of these things that we get on a daily basis. And now we actually have the ability to share this with our customer base and others. But we hardly ever get a chance to talk to someone in the profession, being an attorney. And as gun instructors and employees here, we tell people, hey, we're not an attorney. Now we can say not only are we not an attorney, but we can go talk to Matt Kilgol, look up his book. He can answer those questions for you.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me, sir.
Yes, sir.